Hello, welcome back. Today I am with Chris, a expert when it comes to all things Amazon. He's been in the space for a long time. I believe at least 10 years. You've been in the e-commerce space and now more specifically Amazon. What I really wanted to talk with Chris today about is he's been very involved in the M&A side of Amazon and Amazon agencies. And in my opinion, that's something that's not really been spoken about a lot. People just think about white full stack agency, but he really specialized in Amazon agency. So I really wanted to pick your brain today on how do you see the agency space specifically on Amazon today, and then the wider Amazon space in general.
Thank you for the opportunity. Sounds great.
In your opinion, right now, how do you see Amazon in the last couple of years? Because a lot of things have been changed, right? Probably the biggest thing is the AI coming into Amazon, where it wasn't a factor even a year ago to now, a lot of people are starting to use it more. What do you see the difference in agency valuation and how agencies are operating in general?
No, it's a great question. And I think this industry has really only been maximum 15 years, but really, I think, let's just go with 10 years old. And that is what you see is the ecosphere that you see today is really the sellers that were back then, right? Somebody hired somebody and they became an agency, or somebody had an idea for a piece of software and they became a SaaS solution. And that's kind of where we are today. So it's important, even though it's evolved so quickly, it's still early. And those with us, with gray hair, remember sort of the .com days, and it's very, very similar and very different than those days, if that makes sense. And so, I think where you are today is that the M&A in the space is extremely active. This stuff is really, really hard, and I think the people that do it know it's hard. There's a huge chasm between sort of being a digital agency and being an Amazon agency or a TikTok agency or Walmart or international or the like. And so what we're seeing is we're not seeing any more agencies being formed. What you see is really the group of agencies out there, roughly, let's say 500 agencies in the world right now. But we don't really see any more being formed just because of the difficulty of it all right now. And that's why you see the activity going on right now and in the being in the unicorn business versus sort of being in the horse business, if that makes sense. There's a lot of horses out there. And so what I do in Reach is really I match up entities in the space, companies in the space that may be agencies is where I specialize in, also SaaS, or right now, and we can talk about this, you'll see mixtures out there and different business models for the first time that mix those together. But what I do is match those up to buyers. And so there are a variety of different types of buyers out there, which we can also talk about. But for the most part, what I do in Reach is match make companies for sale and their owners to entities that want to buy them and make sure that that process is as smooth as possible to the maximum exit.
It makes a lot of sense. What I love is the reports you guys put out every so often, like the reports of the details of how many agencies are selling, how many transactions are actually happening month on month. It's very fascinating because the numbers are interesting. I think when you're selling on Amazon or you're operating as a service on Amazon, you don't really know that there's a big space. And now from an M&A standpoint, it makes sense because if you're a normal e-commerce agency, and most of them don't have Amazon capabilities, yet they have a lot of clients that should be on Amazon. Buying an agency kind of doubles their revenue. Plus, you get the existing customers as well. So I imagine a lot of the transactions are from exist like similar industries, and they're just trying to add Amazon to their stack. I imagine.
I mean, there's that and the entities outside of this bubble that we live in, right, that are still trying to solve and have. One of my biggest buyers are, and I sort of pick on a couple of them because they're sort of mirrors of each other. It's kind of where the last 20 years, the digital agencies that survived all of that and the consolidation and everything, and we're talking about $100 million, plus agencies, right? Not the $1 billion, WPP and Publicis and the like, but really the ones that still do Super Bowl commercials. But I pick on them because they're all in San Diego. They're all still, again, have a sexy office. They have people that come to that office. They have a remote team that's new and things like that. They operate a little bit differently, and they do everything from print, TV, radio to Google, PPC, everything in the last 20 years of digital. But still, when it comes to the marketplaces, and especially obviously Amazon leading all that, they still are hungry for more and more talent in that space, and in some cases, are losing deals because they still don't speak Amazon. If that
Yeah.
makes sense.
It makes sense, and I think Amazon is a marketplace. I think a lot of brands are starting to figure out that it's a big marketplace because 4 or 5 years ago there was a thing of oh nobody buys from Amazon or it's not really where my brand should be. I think now bigger brands are realizing that I need to be on Amazon Should I be 100% Amazon only? No, but having an Amazon channel makes a lot of sense. And also for a lot of the brands that I've seen, and from an e-commerce standpoint, is their valuation goes up as well if they do well on Amazon, because then you do well on Amazon and your website feels it, everywhere kind of feels it. And the level of traffic there is on Amazon is just unparalleled, as you know very well. You have a very good ChatGPT proprietary prompt that I love, the Enrich
Oh,
one, where
thanks.
it kind of gives you valuation. I think that's very smart. And what are the valuations you kind of see? Like what multiples of EBIT are they given? Does it really depend on the size and team and contracts you have? Because on I know on your chat GPT it really says if you're X amount of EBITDA, you have good clients and good contracts, and it's not just one client that has most of your revenue, EBITDA will vary and exits will vary.
Again, thanks for the mention of my GPT. As you know, it's more of an exercise for me to stay relevant, if that makes sense, and learn what all this stuff people are talking about. And I've only obviously scratched the surface, though. What I ended up doing was populating it with a lot of knowledge, not only from the last 5 years of conversations I've had, but really like external sources and things like that. And so it is very good for leading owners, not only Amazon agency owners, though that's what it's designed for, but any really agency model can gain a lot from it, just from a planning standpoint, from an evaluation standpoint, and things like that. But to answer your question, really, there's I always say there's four buckets right now. There's extra small, small, medium, and large. Extra small right now in the Amazon agency world, that is somebody that primarily identifies as Amazon, if not 100%. That is, again, it could be Walmart. They could also do TikTok, and they could do everything. But for the simplicity, we're talking about Amazon agencies. Okay, an extra small would be something that's less than 500K EBITDA. We can talk about those more, but they're hard to evaluate. A lot of equity. They're probably just a rollover into something else. That kind of thing. You really get into real companies over really 500K, really more like a million in EBITDA. And right now, I would say there's only probably a couple hundred agencies that are of that size. And then if you get over to 5 million EBITDA, I would say that's the larger bucket. You're looking at more of like 6 to 8 multiples on that, okay?
Wow.
Whereas others would be more like 4 to 5, okay? The short answer to your question is most agencies that are of a certain size are
Yeah.
worth somewhere between 5 and 8x, unless there are actually a couple of cases where a couple of discussions where it's more than that. But for the most part, that's what we're getting. A normal digital agency that doesn't speak marketplace
Yeah.
or Amazon and assuming everything lines up, clients and things along those lines. If all that lines up, you're looking at that agency probably being somewhere between 2 or 3x.
Wow.
Okay, yeah, and so that's the difference between really in a digital agency. They could be great. They could do all kinds of great work, but if they don't speak marketplace, that's where the other multiple comes in of something another 2 or 3x beyond that.
I mean, that's such a interesting point because in the space there's two train of thoughts. You either have a full stack agency where you do everything for everyone, and then you have the second train of thought is you specialize in something. And I do get both sides, right? If you have all the services, the marketplace is open to you, and you can have everyone as a potential client. But I
Yeah.
also the niche side is look, if I'm doing only Amazon, I will be much better than a generalist agency, right? It's just from an operational standpoint and from a rep standpoint, it's going to be very difficult to compete someone who does just on Amazon. And as you know, a platform like Amazon or TikTok, they have so many intricacies that they're quite different from Google, they're quite different from Meta. So being a generalist is very difficult. You might get away with a brand that's very big and has momentum, but really a specific agency, an Amazon only agency, if ran correctly, will always beat results wise and knowledge wise someone who's doing everything. So it's interesting
Yeah.
to see that even the multiples reflect that.
Yeah, absolutely. It kind of comes full circle to your first question. Really, is now we're to today, right? And the pressures that really I kind of refer to as a coming storm or a fog that's coming for the first time. If you're an agency or a SaaS or really even a brand that's trying to operate in this space, you can affect things that you couldn't affect earlier, like things like labor costs can now be sort of brought over to Indonesia. In fact, 40% of the labor in this space is actually out of Indonesia or India or Mexico now. You're now seeing as well. Now I can lower my number one cost. I come from a world 30 years of the digital or of ad agency where it was 6 people around a table just to do a creative brief, right? Those days are over. And unfortunately, those people like myself, had I not pivoted, are out of jobs. They're all brilliant, creatives, minds, all that are all gone, devastated, right? Now that said, if you're an agency owner, the flip side of that coin is now I can raise my EBITDA
Yeah.
just by lowering my labor costs, which was impossible as any type of agency owner ever, right? So now, so that's a great promise of this, right? Now the downside of that is, okay, well, what is AI? What parts do I make AI? Which parts do I not? Do I have technology in house? What do I do with my tech stack, right? What does that do to my operations? Because if I don't do that as an agency owner, I'm going to be competing against people that do, right? And that's going to cook me. So what is positive is a negative as we enter this fog, right? I would just leave, I can talk about this all day, so I apologize, but
Don't
I
worry.
think I was at Prosper Show week before last, which is kind of like the largest gathering of vendors
Yeah.
in this space, in the Amazon space. And if you've never been as a seller, I highly encourage it. If it's a vendor, I encourage it, at least looking at it as well. But the shocking thing was the amount of software that was there. The same amount of agencies, double the amount of software, right? And so that was of great interest. But I think one of the most shocking things that while at the show they had a AI sort of nerd off, if you will. Part of that coming out of that was somebody had sort of taken me aside, one of the agency owners, and sort of sort of showed me his phone, and without revealing who that was, kind of showed me like how he with an app that he developed for his agency that really is just dashboard on every minute of his agency and how more efficient it's getting every day. He's got 4 or 5 agents out there that are just really sort of monitoring his agency for processes improvements and things along those lines, gauging interest, response times to emails, things along those lines, engaging customer happiness, but also things on focus on the books and the revenue and cash flow and things like that as well. And here he's got this dashboard where he can just press a button and make an adjustment to the strategy of the agency, all of a sudden. And he said to me, hey, I'm not going to be hiring anytime soon, because if I identify something that could be hired, it's probably something where I can get more out of an existing employee by enabling them to do more than having to hire somebody else, right? So again, I'll stop talking here, but you can kind of
No,
see
you're
that,
100% right.
yeah,
I
you
see
can see
it
what's
with
coming, right? Yeah,
I
yeah,
see it with our agency as well. I mean, we used to, one of our biggest issue was reporting, right? You have softwares out there for reporting, but they're very expensive for what they bring. You either have to get something like a PPC software, but then you have to pay like a percentage of ad spend, which it doesn't make sense at a certain level, or you have to create your own. I mean, we did that for us. I mean, we have a proprietary dashboard. We built it ourselves in-house with some help from developers that shows all the relevant data. And the good thing is that's custom built. It's what you actually want, right? But, and I think AI, the biggest impact for AI is everything that's data driven and everything that can be tracked can be really optimized and systemized in a way that's never been possible, right? Before
yeah,
you have to get a software for this, a software for that, and they're not really custom built. And if you want them to be custom around, you're going to pay a lot of money. Now, maybe with $1,000 that you're paying for AI and softwares and code vibing, you can have a crazy stack. Now, I think the danger for I think there is first the person you were speaking about. He's probably in the 0.1% because his level of understanding is rare, right? Most agency owners are not even close to that. Let's be
yeah,
real. They want to be, but they're not because they're not just thinking at that level. But also, I
yeah,
think the marketing side is always going to be very important because you see many times a big agency is not necessarily a good agency. It's marketplace, how they're marketing themselves, and who they are in the space as well. And I do believe with AI, it's going to be strategy, understanding how the market works, and actually your experience in the market is going to be more and more important. The What's kind of going to be removed is the reporting, the tracking. That's going to be removed, in my
yep,
opinion. Not removed. It's going to change, right? Which is
yep,
good because that was essential, but it was never productive. So I think now the productivity of an agency can actually go to the bottom line of a client, and I think
yeah,
that's a good thing. Actually, for the brands, it's better because if you're doing AI right, you will be doing a lot better stuff for brands and you have a lot more data. Because to a certain extent, our business, the agency space, it's a data place, right? You have the gut feeling, don't get me wrong. You have that 100%, that comes with experience, but it's a big data point. You need to know your data, you need to know what
it
you're
is.
optimizing, and you're making a good point. And I think for SaaS, the biggest danger for SaaS is that you have a lot of people who are not developers coming into the space, code vibing softwares, but they're not safe because I have friends who are developers and we've worked with developers and they said code vibing has changed the game. The issue with code vibing is it's not safe. If you don't have it on your own software, on your own server, it's not safe. So if it's internally for you as the agency, fair enough, right? Because not many people have access. But when you get to the point of now 1,000 members have access to it and you have millions and millions of data in there, it becomes very tricky, right? Imagine
Yeah,
Helium 10. Helium 10, one of the most popular softwares. If they had a data leak, that would be such an issue, right?
it
And I
would.
think that's something that we'll see happening more and more because people who have been in the actual coding space understand code vibing much better than us, right? They
Yeah.
understand what safety and servers are. But if I'm going to vibe with code vibing, I don't have that level of understanding. I might know what I want to build, but I don't know the back end and the technical part of it. So I think that those are the dangers for SaaS, in my opinion.
Yeah, no, and it's not easy what you guys do, and I'm only the expert in the experts. I don't pretend to. You just lost me down a couple words ago, but which and with all due respect, and that's another thing on like on the SaaS side, and you saw this kind of in the market 3 weeks ago or so with the release of help me the Anthropic version.
Yes. Yeah.
I
Yeah.
think
Yeah.
yeah, and the market itself really just punished every software company
Yeah.
in existence by 10% just cause, right? Just because there's a perception, and literally just a perception of, hey, I can just do, here I'll punish Reddit because you can just make Reddit tomorrow, can't you? And it's like, no, you can't just make Reddit tomorrow, and that's the reality. But from an investor standpoint, which is kind of where I'm at, it's very much a real thing. It would also comes out in the form of like, okay, you do AI, and almost overnight, and just hit me in the face at Prosper as well as almost every night. I don't mean this the way it sounds, but it's like everybody's an AI expert,
I agree
right?
100%. You're so right. And how can you be an expert of something that's been around for a year, right?
Not,
That's another thing.
not. I mean, yeah. I mean, and of this nature, I mean, like, it's like of nothing that's ever existed before
Exactly.
that the human mind can get around. I mean, it's amazing. So no, we're all really cutting edge, and you guys are also, just by the nature of Amazon, right? You guys, the people in this bubble, are the people that the people that prosper are the smartest people in the room. I mean, there literally are, just because you guys are driving the market because you have to follow this behemoth that's throwing different ad types and new API calls, and I
Exactly.
mean, without a manual, and you guys are on it. So I think just by the nature of it, you guys are faster moving than just a typical digital agency, or heaven forbid, a traditional agency that's still what I mean, and they still exist,
Of course.
but not for long, And so yeah, so it's exciting times, but on both sides, the SaaS and the agency side, I think there's different dynamics going on. Oh, by the way, what's going to happen with the economy? I mean,
Of course. Yeah, that's another thing.
you know,
I, I
yeah,
think anyone who says that they know where AI is going, it's lying because there's no way. First of all, most of the AI companies are going out of business because they're losing so much money. Even ChatGPT and OpenAI, they're losing so much money. We don't even know if they'll stay in business. That's one thing. Second thing is, as you said, Reddit is not going to give access to AI. Amazon is definitely not. Try scraping Amazon data with AI and they refuse it. So company like Meta or company like Amazon is going to give access to AI so they can get everything that's proprietary. Every platform, in my opinion, is going to start building their own AI, which they already are. And also another thing that we're not factoring right now, AI, it's pretty cheap, right? What happens if tomorrow OpenAI says, actually, it's 20,000 a month to use us?
right.
So these are all things that we don't know. And also the way my mentality is for AI is I want to understand it very well. I want to really be dangerous in it, understand it, know where it's going, but not pivot fully in it because I don't know if it's going to be around the way it is right now in 6 months.
Again, I think what's old is new again. I sound
Yeah,
old, but it's kind of like reminds me of the browser wars, like a little bit. I mean, it's like wow, back in Netscape days, and so, but it kind of does remind me. It's like not all these guys can survive, and it's almost like what's the platform that and it has to be a platform that we all kind of agree to.
yeah,
Hopefully, it's an open AI, And I think even a lot of these you can make it's my understanding you can make a local copy of these guys and never pay,
yeah.
them a cent. How's that going to affect their business model, so it's the Wild West, I think, times 10, though. I hate to compare the simplicity of the .com days,
I
back
think you're
like
100% right, and I think
yeah,
that's why it's great to have someone like you that has been through that time because I haven't been. I was a kid when that happened, so you actually know
thanks.
that Yahoo was there, Google was there, but how many people, how many browsers even survived? It was only Google that really survived. Nobody
Yeah,
searches Yahoo or Bing, so you know yourself. I imagine, and from everything that I read when it was the .com bubble, there was so much hype, and it was the same as now, crazy
yeah,
valuations, billions in like a second. And then if we look around who survived, there are very, very few companies that actually
yeah.
survived that's still doing well.
Yeah, I don't think even back then, like the internet was the inflation, like that was the helium, that give, whether or not Fido.com that sold pet stuff was ahead of its time,
Yeah,
just a matter of timing. And but the amount of vitriol that got around about 2001, it was one of the things that really caught, quote unquote, caused the burst, right?
yeah.
Was a stupid idea of selling pet food online, but guess what? Like,
It works.
and so yeah, I mean, and so if joke's on you, but yeah, it's very much like that. But I think the difference is that had like the helium, whereas I think AI is actually kind of more like a, what's the opposite of inflation? I mean, it's almost like it's
Deflation
yeah, maybe it's like a pin that goes around just popping balloons,
is
It's
true.
like, because it's like, who's making money on this? And all I see is it costing jobs, and and maybe doing, well, it does amazing things, but what's this all going to mean, kind of thing, who knows? But
It's a very tricky
I
time, and
digress.
also back in the day, social media wasn't such a big part. Now we have this hype machine of LinkedIn, Instagram, Facebook. There's so many people selling automations, right? So they're always going to write, "Oh, your outreach system is dead, your marketing is dead. Use this, use do
Right.
that." I've used a lot of these, and 99% of them make absolutely no difference. Actually, complicate things. But it's again, it's hype
Interesting.
marketing. I understand that because everyone that I know in business, agency space, or e-commerce space, if you look at actually how they're using AI and how much it changed their business, it's not that significant. It does make a
Yeah.
difference, don't get me wrong, but it's not like you go from being an Amazon agency to now AI does everything for you. And that's not what we
No,
hire an
no.
agency for. Because if I'm a brand and I go to an agency and they tell me they have a proprietary AI does everything, that's not someone I want to trust. I might as well do that
Yep.
myself, right? You go to an agency for their expertise, their connections, their understanding of the market. The last thing you're going to go for is just for AI, right? And I see this for agencies and brands in general. There's so many founders right now over focusing on AI and spending 10 hours a day on understanding AI, which I think it's not a waste of time, but it does get close to the point of if you're spending 10 hours on AI, are you getting better at the business you're actually in?
Right.
Are you the brands you're working with more profitable, have better sales and happier? Because if they're not, you're not kind of doing what you're meant to do.
To your point, the stuff's really only about a year old. I mean, really is. Over the last 6 months, I've kind of identified the last three people that were recommended to me who walked them through how to implement AI within their company. And so there's definitely now a role of a consultant to say, hey, we're going to start by analyzing your business, mapping all your processes, see where it actually is going to, have greatest effect and things along those lines. It turns out, hey, it does make sense to replicate yourself, right? To get all the stuff in your theory and your strategy and all that stuff out. Because if Jim or Jane wants you to review their paper and it's 3 a.m. your time, they may at least get some feedback from you and from your agent, that is you, kind of thing. Maybe it doesn't sign off till the morning, but they can have some back and forth with it, kind of thing. Again, like kind of like my GPT
Yeah.
does, and is really good at. It's like, hey, it's 3 a.m. I have a question, and that's what I use it for my consulting as a add on to my consulting. Don't make any financial decisions with it. Don't make any legal decisions. Don't make any life decisions, kind of thing, with it, without a human there always. But it's super helpful tool. So I don't know. There was a question in there, but we're kind of reminiscing about what is the future going to be about all this stuff, and the
Yeah.
short answer is if nobody knows. Okay,
Well, nobody
and
knows. Nobody knows.
yeah, nobody knows. So
We're guessing at best. I do believe history repeats itself. I do see it similar to what the internet happened. It's going to change how we operate. Is
yeah,
everyone going to be out of job? I highly doubt it. I don't see who it will benefit to, right? Because it's just, I mean, I see it for our agency. We've always believed in a lean team of very capable people that we pay very
sure,
well instead of having a big team of underpaid people that we don't know who they are, right? That's always been my philosophy. Now with AI, we can be even leaner, absolutely, but
a
it's
lot
about
leaner.
Yeah, exactly. A lot leaner. A perfect example. So design is images and design is something that AI really changed, right? But if you
Yeah,
actually look at images and designs, yes, for spitting general images is good, but the actual merchandising fact and how an image gets sold, that's still a human part. Like the most important part, it will be the human side still.
absolutely. It's a, a tool. Yeah, people say it's like Photoshop, right? That was a tool, and if you were an artist back then, you're like, oh, this isn't real art, and and I have to learn all this stuff, and those are just digital art, right? It's kind of like that, but times 1,000, obviously. To put the stuff, it's actually really hard to put the stuff together in effective ways, and there's a million ways to put it together, but it's coming, and you have to speak it, kind of
Of
thing.
course, yeah.
And
The market
yeah, but
moves.
yeah, absolutely. But again, I think if you own something that's implementing it, that's the good news.
Yeah.
If you're an employee that's affected by it, and I personally, maybe I'm doom and gloom these days too a little too much, but I do think it's gonna, because I do have a lot of folks that had to prematurely retire,
Same.
if you will, because of it and things like that. And you mentioned a specific example, and that's creative. Right now, I actually have two companies I represent that are really all they do is creative for marketplaces. Okay,
Yeah.
so let's say I have 1,000 ASINs of A plus content.
Yeah.
I need 2 minute explainer videos. I need a 3D diorama.
Rendering,
All
yeah.
that stuff is great. And by the way, I need three of them to do ABC testing. Right. I need that in my attached to my asset management system, and I'm going to be ordering this stuff by the thousands because it's in bulk, right? It's the bulk creative nature that's new in this marketplace. That's a new feature, never really needed before, right? And so now you have this vertical agencies. It's still an agency. It's a creative agency, right? But it's a marketplace agency, and all they do is the first pass is human-driven AI,
Yeah.
right? And the humans come back and wash it. So there's a man sourcing aspect of it to make sure everything's lined up. There's not six fingers on the beach and that kind of stuff,
Yeah.
right? Right. And then reprompting and massaging the prompting, which is obviously key to all of this.
Of course.
And the result is it comes back. I think they had estimated it comes back about a tenth of the cost, which is amazing. I would actually thought it might come back like 2/3 the cost or something. It comes back a tenth of the cost at a tenth of the time. Okay, so if I'm Converse and I want to retreat my entire portfolio or just get on top of it,
Yeah.
of the cycle that's going to happen, products go up, products go down, new things got to have, all that stuff. It's a human and AI challenge
Yeah.
to do that in bulk, right? And so now you have those entities that are coming up, and there's only two or three of those that exist right now, and they're killing it.
Of
But
course.
it's mostly software,
Yeah.
some services in there, right? But for the most part, it's mostly a software company first, which it's just interesting. There's a lot of different kinds of different business models that are still spinning out of this space, if that makes
Of
sense.
course, and I do believe it's always the top does the best, right? If you've been an amazing designer and now you start understanding how to use these tools, you're going to do even better. But right now, prices for designers are still quite high, and I do believe will stay quite high because we in the bubble, as you said, the Prosper guys, the Amazon space, we are
Yeah,
probably more in tune with AI than a lot of people. But the general businesses don't use AI. I mean, if we think about how AI is being used mainstream, is more like a companion and asking
yeah,
questions and actually using it for business. So that's still similar with the internet. You know very well. When the internet started, not everyone had a website or not everyone was on Google or SEOing. It took a decade to get to that point.
it did.
Yeah,
The timing will be different, the time frames and the
of
features
course.
and like what was the aggregator thing, right? Like there's no equivalent of that in that early in the .com bubble. There just wasn't. So everything's a little bit. It's the same, repeating, but it's different because it's Amazon. We're a little bit protected from because we're heat shielded by the fact that it's Amazon.
Yeah,
As people are still ordering online, no matter if hopefully there's no apocalypse or anything like that.
of
But for the
course.
most part, as long as Amazon exists and is doing well and growing, we're shielded from the regular economy that's going on, which is good news, right?
I agree. I think we have it
Right?
very well. And I would one company I wouldn't bet against is Amazon, right? As long as it's run by the same people that are running it, I wouldn't bet against them. And this is what I say to brands, and they're like, but what if Amazon goes down? I said, if Amazon goes down, our problem is not going to be Amazon, it's going to be worldwide, right? If
Yeah.
Amazon is starting to feel the pressure of economy, the whole world will be in a very bad position. So
Yeah.
it's really, and
The
we have
problem is you can't get your rations, right?
yeah,
You can't get your 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 med kits and things like that you're gonna need because guess what? Something else is happening. But no,
Exactly. Yeah.
it'll be interesting. Whatever it'll be, it will be interesting. It's my job to kind of try and at least stay 6, 12 months ahead of this stuff. What keeps me up at night is my agencies that have well, and a lot of this is kind of past or it's been passed, as in regurgitated. But things like tariffs, keep that affect down the chain, affect the agencies and obviously their revenue, which kind of keeps me up at night. So hopefully that's kind of still bumpy, but who knows, The economy keeps me up at night. That would be the one thing that crushes the party, I think, for all of us in the sense that people that buy these things in my world, whether it be a brand, whether it be an agency, whether it be a SaaS solution, they need to feel rich. And as long as they feel rich, that's good. And we have buyers, that's always good for the space. But we'll see what happens. And then, obviously AI is a big freight train that's coming. Hiring's a big thing that's just huge. These are all just cataclysmic things that have never happened before. But I have agencies, just to wrap that up, and I mean, I have agencies going from maybe, well, a traditional agency is usually 30, 35, 40% EBITDA typically. And Amazon agencies are usually a little bit better than that because it's more sales oriented. So it's usually 30, 40, 50% EBITDA. I have some agencies now through automation, through AI, through the projection stuff going to 60, 65% EBITDA.
That's
Okay.
great.
And so that multiple that we talked about earlier, the 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, X is times EBITDA, right? So now you're affecting the literal equation that you're selling your business for. And again, that's never happened before. And
Not at this level. Not at this.
it's just
Yeah.
exciting times. But,
It is very interesting, and I want to ask you about, and I know you can't reveal really because a lot of this information is confidential. But how many transactions have you been part of?
yeah, I'm on my 14th transaction, but over the period of InReach, I kind of never. My first deal was actually about 5 years ago. Building in time right now, I have. I guess I just signed my contract today of the ninth one for sale. It's a
Wow.
mixture. It's a grab bag of different sizes, as we talked about. Some that are more in the 500K range EBITDA, and but now I have 2 or 3 that are in the 1, 2, 3 million EBITDA range, which is what everybody's kind of waiting for. Been kind of waiting for the teenagers to become 21, if that makes sense. And real businesses, it was kind of as you cross a million EBITDA, you kind of become a real business.
Agreed.
No offense to anybody.
Oh, no, you're
Um,
100% right. I couldn't agree with you. Don't get me wrong, half a million EBITDA, it is going to be life changing for you as a human, as a person. But when it comes to business, people are usually not going to be very interested in a business that size.
yep.
300,000 in EBITDA, congratulations. That's definitely a good number. Like if we talk about everyday normal life, it's an amazing number, life changing number. But from a business perspective, it's really nothing. I mean, 5 to 8 times EBITDA, it's a crazy number because if you're doing 3 million in EBITDA, I mean, you can potentially exit for even 20 to 24 million, which is. And I imagine a lot of these deals are like earnouts. I imagine they maybe did give half or 70, 80% upfront, and then it's deferred. I imagine a lot of these deals are like that, or I might be wrong.
The larger the deal, the better the terms, obviously. And a deal is that the price that you sell it for and the terms.
Yeah,
They negotiate kind of differently. The sooner you want out, the lower the price is going to come.
yeah,
But typically, an earnout, and almost always for a service-based business and an agency, there's an earnout for the owners. Usually, it's 1 to 2, sometimes 3 years. It could depend. It depends whether they want to actually become like part of that larger ship and want to get some of their earnout through less equity and more salary and things like that. There's all kinds of things that are all negotiated about that, and that's. I'm not an M&A firm. I always say that to everybody involved because I legally can't say that.
yeah.
But the smarter people I work with and recommend walk people through a lot of that, and highly recommend getting help in that region on that way. So.
What are the biggest deals you've seen, like the bigger deals? And it doesn't need to be exact amounts, of course. I don't want to hear names or anything like that. But what are the bigger deals you've seen?
The biggest one I think lately was Commerce Canal,
Yeah,
and then they bought Ad Advance after that, and they are funded by a group that their name eludes me at the moment, who is well funded to fund those transactions.
yeah,
So we might call that, say, a roll up.
yeah,
The interesting thing there is that they're an agency. First acquisition really was an agency plus software, more software, and their second one, Ad Advance, is really a software play. And so the question becomes, and I would say I always admired them as well, just how they've grown as an agency, how they promoted themselves, run by people that have run non-Amazon agencies before, so they kind of bring that knowledge. Shout out to those guys. But that would be an example of one that is some of the larger stuff going on. The larger transactions happened probably in the last 6 months. There have been other moves. There's an agency called Mind Groove with a U. They bought an agency in Germany, which was the largest marketplace agency in Germany, called Ameo, AMEO. That happened a couple weeks ago. That was another really big surprise. Mind Groove is more like a $400 million agency,
Wow.
digital agency. It's been around about 20 years. They've done about 9 acquisitions over that time or so,
Wow.
and now are solving marketplace woes, in this case in Europe.
Yeah.
Germany's a big market within Europe. Very devoted fans there, devoted consumers, I should say, to brands. Very loyal to brands there. So they made a move to go ahead and buy all of those assets there. There's a lot of agencies that are U.S. bound that are now comfortable buying Europe and solving for Europe that way, but there are agencies that have a presence in every marketplace. You probably know this now better than I. How many international marketplaces are there on Amazon
I mean,
right
there's
now?
so many. I mean, just if you think about Europe, you have Germany, Poland, Turkey, Italy, Spain. I mean, just in Europe, UK, of course, Ireland is a separate marketplace. Most of the countries are almost a marketplace in Europe. The biggest is Germany in Europe, and then followed closely by the UK. Then I think it's Spain and Italy and France that are bigger. And the good thing about Europe, I mean, think about it, Europe is, I think, smaller than the US. That's why brands that are in the UK say, yes, you can go to the US, but you can go so easily to Germany. Like, it's so close, right? And in Germany, you're
Yes.
taking Austria, Poland, and so many countries are close. So Europe is becoming a very big player, and it will only become bigger because we in Europe are usually a couple of years behind the US from a consumer
Yes.
standpoint to innovation standpoint. So everything that happens in the US, it usually happens either a couple of years or a couple of months after in Europe. So I do believe you see a lot more transactions in marketplaces here. Same for the UK as well. There's almost no countries anymore, right? You can be in the UK and have an international company. You can be from Germany and have an international company. So location is mattering less and less.
Yeah, no, it does, and you can imagine where all this is going to be in 50 years.
Oh,
Um,
yeah.
I mean, there'll be drop shipping it out of probably space, I would imagine, right? So
Yeah.
that'll make 3PL a little bit easier, and then borders and things like that. But for the most part, you can imagine also the amount of just today the logistics and across the borders, and even within the EU friendly countries, much less outside, and now complicated by all the other stuff going on as well. By the way, the answer to the question is there's 20 to 21. Apparently, there's one going online right now, active Amazon international marketplaces.
Wow.
So, and some of those are small, some are not, but they're all going to eventually be big.
I
um,
agree.
those skills, what you guys bring to the table, is highly sought after, and will be for a while. I think this bubble is going to be another 20 years, so we're all good for a while. Figure it out in the meantime and grow something that's worth something in that. I highly recommend it, and then sell that and do it again while the getting is good. But again, as long as Amazon's doing well, we're doing well. So
Yeah, and I think these are
cool.
very transferable skills, right? If you understand a marketplace as complicated as Amazon, these are skills that's similar to what you did with agencies. Like your skill sets are very transferable to what you're doing right now. And you're also coming with the level of understanding the market for the last 20, 30 years compared to someone who's younger. They maybe have 3 years worth of data sets, right? You have a lot more. So these are all advantages that someone that's maybe a little bit younger in the space, from an experience standpoint, won't able to know it, right? You see AI right now, but as you said, you can compare it to the .com boom.
Right, you can, but then again, you can't, So it's like,
Exactly.
it's that therein lies the challenge that we're all going into. And
Of
so
course.
I try and help owners
Yeah.
navigate that a little bit, and then ultimately I try to at least bring, and maybe it's through an AI second opinion as well, as to measure the market. But I wake up a little nervous just because that's my job. But on the other hand, you guys are just brilliant, and everybody in this space is
Thank you.
just amazing to work with. So.
Appreciate it. And I don't think we're not easy to work with either many times, right?
No, no, no. No, 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 no.
Yeah, I agree.
Founders are interesting, especially when it comes to selling their business, their baby. Yeah.
Of course, I
So
think it's such a personal experience, right? And when you start talking about these bigger transactions, it's a lot of life-changing money, right? So,
yeah, and for your employees too, and any good owner worries, and they all do worry about their employees because that's what got them there, right? It's a very tight knit group. Also, everybody in this space knows everybody else, and
oh,
so don't blink. Don't
it's
you
an
know.
incredibly small. I mean, it's big, but yet small. Like if you've been it for a bit of time, like everyone knows everyone. I ask this question a lot of people. Who do you admire in the space? Who do you see as a person or as an agency that is doing things very well and has been doing things for some time?
I'm gonna not pick one. I mean, I think it's all the people that we're all linked in together with, and anybody that's not linked in this space, I highly encourage it, even whatever the role be, but especially as a seller and like,
Yeah,
but you have brilliant minds like Destiny, and she's figured out the next ad type before it's before noon, and we all figure it out from her, it's stuff like that. You've got like obviously brilliant minds that were the first kind of successes in the space, like James Thompson, and they are difficult to deal with, but every owner in this space really is going, as we talked about. It's not hard. It's not easy to run a normal agency or SaaS,
yeah.
but if you run it in this environment, it's even harder. And by the way, we're doing it in the fog. We're all kind of just stumbling around kind of thing. And so, cheers to everybody that's in this space, because I think again, you're not at Prosper because you haven't worked really hard, and
Of course, yeah.
you're not dumb, for lack of a better word. So, but yeah,
I agree. It's as you said, it's not an easy industry, and no industry is easy, of course, but it's experience that's very, very good to have. And I think right now, the less you listen at what people say, it's almost more beneficial to you. Because when I go to LinkedIn and I see 25 different posts that contradict each other of where it's going and how it's going, you almost get confused. That's why I think the best operators and agency owners of the space are the ones that actually learn from the data they have. Because when you're working with X amount of clients, you see what's happening in real time. That's actually real data. That's actually happening compared
yeah,
to what you read, right? That's why I think an agency is so valuable. You get so much data. You see, okay, Rufus is important, but how important is it? Because the sales we've seen coming from Rufus are very small compared to
yeah,
traditional search, right? It doesn't mean that Rufus won't be a bigger factor 6 months from now or a year from now, but if you optimize for it now, you might lose what you have now. So I think it's important to know when to pivot and how to pivot.
yeah,
Because as you said, AI is important, but if everyone goes full AI right now, they can go out of business. Similar to what happened with the pet brand that was selling online. Great idea, but maybe wrong timing, right? The market wasn't ready for that. But then someone like Zetsi Pose exited for 500 million 20 years later, right? So it's about doing the right thing at the right time. Because if you do the right thing at the wrong time, what we're going to say, it's not the right thing. Yeah.
what you said exactly. Like you could have sold your brand, you know, 3 years ago for whatever. It's all kind of timing and things, but I think I'm very bullish on the whole space.
So,
Whether it's going to be a rocky road or it's going to be we all shoot off a cliff together kind of thing. I don't, who knows, but or the trebuchet or whatever, with Jeff Bezos pulling the rope kind of thing. Anyway, whatever happens, I think it's a dynamic space, and the people in it that are already speaking it. There's so much opportunity, so many different business models to come,
oh, sorry.
so much acquisition and consolidation. It literally is just starting. I mean, somebody kind of pointed out at the Prosper show as we're walking out. It's like, there's really no one in that room, with a few exceptions, that's really $100 million company there yet. None. But they're gonna be.
Yeah,
And that's just kind of how early it is. Anyway, more time and a little more seasoning, and a lot of this stuff's gonna be. I see a lot of stars shooting out of this space, if that makes sense.
I agree. I think we're very early. As you said, it's been 10, 15 years, but it's really been 5 to 10. I mean, the agency space 10 years ago, I wouldn't even consider it an agency space because even the way ads were 5 years ago, let alone 10 years ago, it's nothing compared to now. So
Right.
the space is changing, everything is changing, and you said it's so early. It's like comparing traditional marketing 10, 15 years in the space compared to 50 years after. And e-commerce, I think most people realize it's something that's going to stay here. Doesn't mean retail will die because retail, there will probably be still a factor of retail, but e-commerce is is here to stay, and it's still in its infancy, which is crazy. It's still in its infancy. Chris, really appreciate you coming over. I don't want to keep you more. I think everyone who's
Sure.
going to listen to this is going to be super valuable. Your knowledge is second to none in this space when it comes to understanding. No, 100%. Understanding how things work and where the space is going. I really enjoyed the reports. I please put more reports out because
Sure.
you have a lot of data that we don't. And yeah, thank you, really thank you for coming here. If Chris, you can reach him on LinkedIn. He's very active on LinkedIn and reaches the company or in reach, and he is very well respected and very well known in this space for a good reason.